Hi everybody, today I'm going to start with something you already know. Church was never intended to mean a building, or an event, or even the calm after the argument on the way to church. So what's church supposed to be? Many would quickly respond to that question and say, of course, church is the people. And whilst that's true, it's not the whole of the picture. The history of the church is pretty unbelievable when you think about it. It was basically started by a man who spent most of his life learning to join together pieces of wood. And he picked a group of men to help him who, by any stretch of the imagination, were not the best trained, most well-connected people around. And then he wandered around a little nation called Israel, which was under the rule of a massive empire, the Roman Empire. He told stories that he called parables, most of which people didn't actually understand at the time. And he told people they had to pay unfair taxes to the Romans. He was hated by the church of his day. And he was seen as deluded and extremist by his own brothers and sisters. And he kept talking about dying, and then he died on a cross, publicly humiliated for everybody to see. If you were starting something, that's not the way you'd start it. And then the rumours started, though, didn't they? That the man that everyone had seen die, the one that told all those funny stories, had actually come back to life. Crazy, isn't it? How could anyone believe that? Except no one could find the body. And hundreds of people were claiming that they'd seen him and touched him. So much so that all the people who'd been close to him, who'd scarpered when he was arrested, they started coming together and they went out on the streets and started proclaiming that Jesus was alive and that he was the saviour. And this group of crazy dissidents were defying the might of that superpower, the Roman Empire, and the religious system around them when they were doing that. Worse than that, they weren't even making a whole lot of sense to the religious people of the day, but they were making great sense to ordinary people. They kept talking about a kingdom that wasn't of this world. They alienated the powerful people and the authorities, and then they offended practically everybody by healing people under the authority of this man that they claimed had risen from the dead. And ultimately, the whole city came to a standstill as a result of their witness. So what the authorities decided to do is they decided what any good authority would do, and they decided to shut them down. And they executed some of the leaders and scattered most of the others. And they thought, hey, that's the end. We've finished this church thing. But those uneducated, previously dispirited, ragtag group of people continued to claim that God did something, and that something was raising Jesus from the dead. And in a relatively short time, this movement, calling itself the Way, replaced most of the pagan gods in the Roman Empire. Now, all that, when you think about it, sounds pretty unbelievable, but it's true. So what is this thing we call church? What should we expect when we talk about church? Well, it's probably quite different from most people imagine when they use that word. Because the problem is that once the church became accepted by the Roman Empire, it stopped developing. Once it stopped being opposed, it got comfortable. It organised itself, but it organised itself around sustaining itself rather than organising itself around its mission. And in doing so, it lost sight of its vision and became institutionalised. You see, the problem with the church, the problem with any church, including our church, it's not about buildings or whether we are organised. We should do things well. We have a word from God that we're to do what we do well. And in all that we do all things well. That isn't the issue. The issue is how we organise ourselves. Do we organise ourselves around sustaining ourselves, or do we organise ourselves around a mission? When we organise ourselves around the mission, we step into the call and vision that Jesus had for us. And I'll be back tomorrow.